Well, hello, beautiful people. I thought it was time for a Facebook Live, and I've got a very fun topic for you today. So, the first thing is we're going to talk about receiving. Sorry, I was just looking to see if I could actually share this easily, but apparently not. So, oh well. Anyway, receiving. Now, this topic came because someone wrote me saying, hey, can you talk about why receiving is this thing that's often scary or it's costly that you're always paying for it? And I'm like, well, that's one way of looking at it. And for some of us, that is sometimes the experience that we have, okay? And I think receiving is a really interesting energy because in theory, we all say, oh yeah, of course I like to receive. Of course I want to do that. Hi everyone who's coming on. Nice to see you. Say hi, please. I like it when you say hi. It makes me happy. Yeah, and it's really interesting when you start to actually unpack what receiving is, okay? Now, for each of us, it's going to look a little different, but I want to talk to you about some of the things that I know it to be, and then I wonder what you might add to that. And, by all means, add your pieces in the comments, because I think that for most of us, we have a very narrow and limited definition of receiving. And when you expand it to be actually all that it can be, it becomes a lot more fun, basically. So let's first of all talk about some of the things where people sort of shy away from receiving because, well, like the person who wrote to me said, well, it's scary and, it's costly. Now, usually when you have those sorts of experiences, it means there's been some kind of trauma in your past normally. And so we don't receive easily when, for example, our safety has come from needing to be in control. And that might occur because you've lived with a narcissist or you've lived with someone who was abusive or, you've lived in some kind of unsafe environment. And then you might also not be great at receiving because you've learned to be very independent. I know nothing about that one, right? And literally, that can come from a lot of different things. That can come because you're very capable. It can come because the people around you are somewhat unreliable. Yeah, hi, everyone who's coming on. We're talking about receiving, and it's a very big topic. So we're not going to cover everything, but I'm going to cover lots of the things that I'm aware of right now. And of course, if you've got a question, please throw it in the chat. So when you're independent, maybe and when I say independent, there's a good independence and there's too independent, okay? Too independent being where you won't receive help from anybody, where you have to do it all yourself. And that may show up as being a perfectionist or, thank you. Yeah, I got my hair cut. Yeah. And so you may be a perfectionist, or you may have been in a situation where you're being the caregiver, and so you end up always being the one giving, and there seems to be no space for actually receiving. And so I wonder, what it would be like if you start to look at, if you looked at a scale of 1 to 10, well, how much am I receiving right now? Now, for some of you, it's going to be like 1, like, oh my gosh, or less than 1, 0, minus, because you're giving, right? And quite a while back, if you go into my videos, you will find a video, another Facebook Live about overgiving. If that is you, go find that one. It was probably a few months back, but it's definitely worth listening to, because if you're an overgiver, then that's not really that healthy in the long term. Okay. And so one of the things is that if you are more at the 10 scale and you're really good at receiving, then you probably don't need to listen to this, but you might be able to give some people some ideas about how else they can receive. And we'll talk about that a bit in a minute. So somewhere you're on that scale, okay, of not really receiving very much or receiving a lot. Now, one thing that's really interesting about this is that we often think receiving is all about what people give us. And I have a much wider definition of receiving than that, okay? Like, for example, there's been a python living in the roof lately. And I mean, snakes are a symbol of transformation. They have an energy of transformation. And yesterday morning, I was getting ready to do some energy work with a colleague, and literally the python slithered across the grass just right where I was upstairs, thankfully, but just where I was. Now it obviously was waiting till I was there, because otherwise it would have done it when I wasn't there, you know. And I was really grateful, because for me that's truly a receiving of the energy of that animal. And so I think that we need to look at extending our definition of receiving, okay? And this is one of the things where you look at, if you think receiving is scary, one of the ways you can start to make it more enjoyable is by extending the possibility of receiving from many other things. You know, if where I live, there's a lot of trees. And so for me, there's a receiving of the trees and of all the contribution they are on the planet. You know, there's a receiving of, a lot of small things, like I will receive from the cottage I live in. It's literally like, okay, I'm so grateful because it's very sweet and pretty and I can make it look beautiful without a lot of effort. And it's kind of like this thing where if you expand your idea of what receiving is, then you don't have to miss out on receiving, okay? Because I think often we've sort of been told, well, you know, you have to receive from another person and, you know, it only works if they give to you. And, you know, some of us don't have the greatest people in our lives. And that could also be an invitation to get new people, you know, I will say that. But then if you have amazing people in your life and you have had some trauma in your background and you're not ready to receive because it's been like, oh my gosh, and this is, I think, something that happens a lot for with people, where instead of receiving the beauty that someone is trying to give you, you might be suspicious of them, or you might outright refuse it because you're wondering how else you're going to have to pay, and this is what happens when you've got trauma. So what I would say is, if receiving isn't a fun, joyful thing for you, then literally look at what is the trauma that needs some resolving, basically, and there's lots of different ways that you can get that trauma resolved. I would definitely suggest looking at your nervous system as one particular place to start, because I find that if you resolve it at that level, a lot of things change, okay? And they change permanently, which is cool. So, then there, of course, there is the receiving when someone is being mean. See, Anna, she's all ready to receive, and now it is here. Yeah. And so I just want to talk a little bit about when someone's being mean. So there's a choice there where you can either go into resistance, you can address it with them, or you can literally just receive it and go, okay, I'm aware of that person, I'm aware of that stuff, and that doesn't work for me. So what am I going to choose here? Okay, so there's no resistance and reaction in it. It's literally just a receiving of the awareness and then another choice. Okay, so there's lots of different ways of being with receiving if people are sending you not nice stuff, all right? And like that would go for like trolls on social media too, like sometimes I will receive them and sometimes I'll go, you know what? It's your turn to get blocked today. Bye-bye. And I don't really have a point of view. I'm just like, what's working? What's going to work today? All right. So if the other thing I do want to talk about with receiving is sometimes you've been trained not to receive, okay? So if you have grown up in an environment where you've been told you're not worthy, where you're not good enough, or you've been told you're selfish, then like basically if there's been a lot of judgment is what I'm really saying. If you've grown up in that kind of environment, then you don't want to receive, because basically most of what's come to you has been stuff that hasn't been very enjoyable to receive. And so what I'm going to suggest today is that you're going to want to retrain your receiving muscle, okay? And this is the joy, because let me see. So often when I talk about asking and receiving, I'll talk about like the big asks and the really big exciting stuff, because that's what I love talking about. But lately what I've been playing with, and I wrote a post about this just a couple of days ago actually, is asking for a lot of small things and asking them to show up soon. Okay. And it's really interesting because on my list this morning, for example, was I would like a lot more laughter in my world. And I went out today and there was this cacophony of kookaburras laughing their heads off. And it made me laugh so much because I was just like, oh, there's my laughter. And, it doesn't always show up how you imagine, right? Sometimes it shows up really differently. I was thinking I would see something that was funny. And I guess it was funny in one way, right? And so I wonder what it would be like if you would let go of the control enough to go, okay, I'm going to allow this to show up however it can show up. But start asking for small things that can basically reset your receiving muscle, okay? Because when you do that, there's a real magic actually that starts, and you begin to actually trust the world, trust the universe a lot more, because all of a sudden you're getting a lot of good things showing up rather than just all the miserable things, right? And then receiving does become an adventure. So a few ways you can do that. So there's a physical thing that I would say, and that is like, there's a thing called heart coherence, and the Heart Math Institute has it, and there's lots of different people that have put out, videos on how to basically breathe with heart coherence. And so that is one way to really open up that whole chest area where basically, of course you receive from everywhere, every direction, everything. But what I've found is that by opening up that area, everything else is amplified, basically. So yeah, so in essence, that's one thing you can do. And I think the thing about the asking for small things is it's easy to make a list of 5 or 10 things that would be fun to receive, right? And sometimes those things come in really interesting ways. Because, for example, sometimes I have too many thoughts in my head. I've been asking for quite a long time, where could I exhibit my art? And it's funny because there is a place in town where I could easily do an exhibition, but it didn't feel that light to start there. And I thought, oh no, what I need to do is go and do a couple of markets so I get a sense of, well, what is it people are seeking, right? Anyway, so I've arranged to go to the Mullany Handmade Markets in October, and I've put the date there for anyone who wants to come in real life and visit. It'll be fun. Yeah. And what happened was I was talking to one of my clients about this. Now, she lives overseas, and she was talking to me about it, and she was asking me all these questions about, well, what's the stall going to be like and what are you going to do with it? And we're talking about all these creative ideas. She said, well, I think I'm going to come. I'm like, what? Because for me, I wasn't really expecting anyone to come and help me. Anyway, she's like, oh, I want to make sure it's really good for you, so I'm going to come. Anyway, so she's arranged that she's going to come, which is really amazing for me because, here I am thinking I'm just having this little stall and I'm just going to do my thing and it's going to be whatever it is. And now I'm like, well, I definitely can't back out. I better start painting, right? And so this is how receiving works. Because if I'd said to her no, then that would have stopped the energy on the whole thing. Because sometimes you're like, that's amazing. Someone would do that for me. And this is where I think we really have to expand our receiving is, what is it that we don't believe someone would do for us, that when they do it, we're just blown away, and what is it we can be and do for others? What contribution can we be for others that would blow them away as well? Because if we would like the world to have more receiving, if we would like us to receive more, if we would like all the people we know to receive more, in effect, if we have a generosity of spirit, because receiving really is a lot about generosity of spirit, right? And if you don't have a generosity of spirit, then you're not wanting more for others. And so, and hi everyone who's joining. I'm so happy to see you all. And if you've got questions, just throw them in the chat, okay? And in a little bit, I'm going to do an energy immersion. I haven't done one of these. I don't know if I've ever done one on a Facebook, actually, on a Facebook Live. So I'm going to do one in a little bit because I thought it would be a really fun way to experience receiving for you all. So when I finish talking about all the other bits, I'm going to do that just for a few minutes. So hang on and we'll have some fun. And if you don't know what an energy immersion is, it is like a meditation, kind of. It has a lot of energy in it. And so literally it's got a transformative energy. And yes, it can do over distance. So you don't need to worry that you're not sitting here in my lounge room. And it has a transformational energy to it that allows change, basically. And so that's always fun. And we will do one of those shortly. So another way I find really good for opening up the receiving is to write. And I know this sounds funny, but with my daily, what 5 or 10 things can I receive today? Really just fun stuff. I've also been occasionally slipping in something a bit bigger. And one of those things today, or yesterday, no, yesterday, it must have been yesterday, was I was asking about my fiction books. And I was just like, okay. So, yeah. And, Marina, signs like this, yeah, she's saying that she got a sign, this Facebook Live is a sign for her. And that is part of receiving. When we're really willing to receive all the messages, it's just like me and the kookaburras. That was part of receiving. It was a message, And when we're really willing to receive from everything, then what happens is we actually move very much into gratitude. Now, the interesting thing about gratitude is most people think, oh, I'm going to write my gratitude list and I've been grateful. I have a different perspective on that, because for me, that never really created a lot. I could write the list, but I had to feel it. I had to sense it. I had to actually know that energy with my body. And what I've noticed with my list of small things is that I'm getting to know that energy of gratitude a lot every day, which of course is a very generative energy, right? And so that's what I started to say. Sorry, I'm all over the place. I know I've got so many things in my head. So what I started to say was part of the receiving for me also is when I write things down. So I write them down with curiosity and joy and a sense of adventure, okay? Because if I write them with a sense of need or a sense of entitlement or a sense of desperation or anything like that, of course they're not going to create, because that twists all the energy, basically. Whereas when you write them with a sense of joy and creation and pleasure and adventure, all of a sudden the universe is going, oh, this is what you want. Okay, cool, let's go. And so I'd written down about my fiction book, and I've known lots of pieces of it for a long time, but I've never really had a storyline. Anyway, this morning I woke up and I was wandering around and I was just pottering, I was cleaning out my art space and making it all neat for the next round of painting and just pottering, really. And I was thinking about a book that I'd recommended to a friend, and it's called Becoming Animal. And it's got these parts in it that are just spectacularly beautiful. Like the words are just mesmerizing. And I was just thinking about, oh, wow, you don't see that very much in the world. Like people don't talk about those books very much. And anyway, it sent me on all these sort of little trains of thought. And next thing, the whole concept for the book, the fiction book that I've been trying to write literally for years, and I've known is coming and I didn't know how to pull all the pieces together. Literally, it just played out and I was like, oh my gosh, there it is, right? So this is receiving. It's not trying. And that was really magic. I was so excited. And all day I've just been playing with the ideas and wondering what else is going to show up for it. And it's been really fun. So, let me see what else. Okay, so another thing I want to say about receiving is you do need to not be the person who does everything, okay? Because it's really easy to be the very capable doer. And if you are that person, people may be intimidated by you. And it takes courageous people to say to you, hey, what if you let me do this? The first time this really occurred for me was my Living Beyond Burnout book launch. And a couple of my friends sat me down and they're like, okay, what's the deal? Why aren't you finishing that book? And I was like, oh, I don't want to do the launch stuff, blah, blah. I was just like, la, la, la. And they were like, well, we'll do that. So you don't worry about that. And you just finish the book. And I was so blown away. And I had friends do all kinds of things for me for that book launch. They made beautiful platters and all put up posters for me and all kinds of different things. And I had to really stop myself from trying to do everything because I'm so used to doing everything, right? And what I would say is that this is the willingness to be out of control, for it not to be how you would do it, for it actually to be better than you could do it. Because honestly, I can't make a food platter look like my friends did. I cannot. You know, mine are a little slap happy, let's just say, whereas theirs were beautiful. And so what this is about inviting people into your world who actually really desire to be a contribution. Okay? Because so often we think the only people that are giving to us are the ones who are giving us shit. And so we don't open the doors to invite the people who would be kind, who would be generous, who would be generative. And so this is really about a bit of a flip of the switch. And you know, it starts really from the concept of your point of view creates your reality. Because if you believe that everything you're receiving is not so much fun, that's all that can show up. But if you start playing with the universe and going, okay, I'd like some really cool things to show up, what do you got? Then there's this real magic that can show up. Okay, so I want to do a little energy immersion with you. So all you need to do for this, now if you're driving, I'm going to suggest that you turn this off and you actually come back and listen to the last bit of it later, because it's not the best thing to do when you're driving, okay? Because different people's bodies react in different ways. So all I want to do now is if you just sit in a really relaxed kind of space, somewhere where you're comfortable, where your body's happy, and you can close your eyes if you wish. And I'm just going to ask you to take a couple of big, deep breaths and allow yourself to receive the beauty and the magic of the energies that are trying to flow to you, and yet you haven't been allowing them in. So as you take those really big, deep breaths in, like breathe in almost like through the earth, up, through, out through your head, out through your heart, in through your heart, like just really breathe really, really, really deep, okay? And allow your body to relax. Because if you are not relaxed and you're not allowing space and stillness, then actually it's really hard to receive. And I'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. So now just sense, what is it actually that the universe, the world, even someone or something is desiring and trying to gift to you that you haven't been allowing in? Just sit with that energy and allow that energy to just permeate your body, and notice where it feels comfortable, where it doesn't feel comfortable, where it's shifting around, it's making you a bit wriggly, or whether it's really relaxing for you and blissful. And just actually notice all of the spaces where you are receiving this energy, and anywhere that maybe you're not receiving this energy. And just breathe in to those spaces where you're maybe not receiving the energy as fully as you could be. And just actually allow the energy to just permeate a little bit further through those spaces in your body, in your world. And actually just enjoy the receiving of the energy. And notice that as you receive this energy, it brings gifts to your life. It brings possibilities to your life. It brings choices that maybe you haven't been able to make before. And I invite you just to sit in that very precious, beautiful space and allow this energy to take you on a little magical mystery tour of your world. And just allow it to show you, whether it be as a movie, whether it be as an energy, whether it be a song, whatever it is for you, allow it to show you what it would like to gift to you. Now I'm just going to be quiet for a moment or two, just to allow a little bit of space for that. And as you begin to receive, allow that energy to move even deeper into your world. Allow it to expand your world. Allow it to show you new ways forward, new possibilities. And allow yourself to receive it in your heart, in your being, in your soul, in your life. And notice going forward, if you go a little bit into the future, how different your life can be if you allow this energy to permeate throughout everything. It actually takes very little for us to change our reality. We just need to open up, open to the possibilities, allow the space, the silence, the stillness, the peace, for these energies to actually do their work in our world. And as we do that, there's a real magic that emerges. And so I invite you to bring yourself present to this moment, the space you're in. Notice what you're touching. Notice where your feet are. Notice your breath. Bring yourself into this moment and bring that beautiful energy with you. Okay? Because it's here for you. It's not here to be against you. It's here for you. And if you allow it to be here for you, and if you begin to trust it and you, that you will only receive miracles through this energy, then truly miracles are what will arrive. So I invite you to maybe do this energy immersion. You can do it by yourself, or you can replay this, whichever works for you, every day for about a week. And just particularly be still and allow the receiving of the energy that is coming to you. Because as you receive that energy, you give the magic a place to land. You actually invite new, different things to come, because basically they can be part of your world because there's space for them to actually be. Okay? Because often we're asking, but we haven't left a second of space, or, just there's no stillness, there's no peace. And so there's nothing actually that would allow what we're asking for to land in our world. And this is so much of why people have all these big views and big ideas and big dreams, but they never actually come. And this is part of why I've been asking for all the small things to arrive, because my view is, if you allow all the small things, you leave the space for all the small things to arise and to land, then what can happen is the big things naturally find their way there too. Okay? So it's a bit of a sneaky backdoor way of actually getting to the big stuff. And so what I'd invite you to do is to play with this and really just explore it. And, we're going to do a lot of different energy immersions in the Creative Futures class. And I am excited to announce it's now available online as well as in the Netherlands, live in the Netherlands. And so it's the weekend of the 28th, 29th of September, so 2 weeks away. And we're going to do a lot of energy immersions where we really dive deep into the creation spaces that are available. And it's the fastest way I know to actually create. And so that's what we're going to do. And because when you basically become resonant with the energies that are trying to create with you, and when you actually allow that frequency to connect with you and match, you and what you're asking for have a match. It's kind of like that TV show Perfect Match, probably better, actually way better than that TV show when I think about it. That was a terrible show. But it's that thing of there's this perfect match where the energy you're being and the energy of what you're asking for finally connect. And as they do, that's when the magic really explodes, right? And so I would invite you to play with this and explore this. And it's really interesting for me how this shows up, because often it shows up in really unexpected ways. Like, I don't know if I've talked about this, but I mean, I'm living in a really sweet little off grid cottage at the moment in Melania, and I love it. And yet, there are some things about it that don't work that well for me. And so I was kind of in the question of, well, will I move? What will happen? And then a friend of mine said, do you know such and such has got a cottage for rent? And I was like, oh no, I didn't know that. I'll go have a look. And I went and had a look. And when I got there, I realized I met this lady on the very first day I moved to Mullaney. I was trying to buy a chair off her, but of course it wasn't right. But we were destined to meet, okay? And this is where the real magic is. So I arrived there to look at the cottage, and we felt like we already knew each other. And that cottage actually fulfills pretty much everything I'm asking for. And what was really interesting is it didn't have a fireplace, and it didn't have the plastic screens that allow me to do my art on the veranda. And she said to me, oh, I went back there to test out the internet a few days later. And she said, oh, let's go up the corner and meet the lady who's got the retreat place that she's renovating at the moment, but let's go have a look. And I was like, oh yeah, that'll be great, because I figured I can run retreats from my place because there's enough places nearby for people to stay. Anyway, we go up there, and in the corner, there's one piece that wasn't renovated. She goes, oh yeah, that fireplace is going tomorrow. And Jill and I looked at each other and we were like, it's going to Jill's place for me, because Jill had already said we'd be willing to put in a fireplace for you. And this is where there's a real magic, right, that comes, because I was already resonant with the new cottage. Okay, I had already brought that fully into something that I could have without really thinking about it too much, but just knowing what it was I was asking for. And I was really willing for my energy to meet that level. Anyway, so that was really cool, right? Got a fireplace. And then next thing, Jill's, and I thought, well, I'm going to ask her about the plastic, because why not? Why not ask, right? And this is another part of receiving. You've got to be willing to ask. So I said to her, the place I'm at now has this really great plastic screens on the veranda, and it means I can do my art on the veranda. And I said, would you be willing to put some of that in on the veranda that's there? And she's like, oh, I'll talk to my husband, we'll see. Anyway, she's come back to me and said, yep, sure, we'd love to do that. And I'm like, awesome, that's really cool. So then I was really excited, right? And I was thinking, well, I wonder what else I could ask for. And I had been for a walk down the lane, and it's a really beautiful street. Like at the end of it, it's like this got spectacular views all over the coast and just lovely, But I noticed that there was no horses in the street. And, anyone who knows me, I do love horses. And so I said to myself, well, wouldn't it be really cool if some horses could move in? I kid you not, 3 days later, Jill posts a photo of her with the horses that have just moved in. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I was so excited, because then I can go and say hello and pat them and, maybe even get to know them a little bit better. So this is what happens when you are resonant with the futures that you're asking for. They show up really, really, really fast. So what I want to say to you is, if you build your muscle of receiving in the ways we've talked about today, you will have to get really creative about what you're asking for, because you'll find a lot of stuff starts showing up really easily. So I want to invite you to that magic. Creative Futures is one of my most favorite classes, because really, we think the future is way off somewhere, way off in the future. And yet the creation of it is in the now. The creation of it is here now. And that's where the real beauty and magic is. So it's not like we're just talking about theories. We're actually going to be really engaging in the process of both the energetic creation and potentially the physical creation, depending on how far we get through the energetics. And interestingly, I downloaded a whole sort of new model for that as well last week. So I'm really curious, because it's going to be a very different class to the one that we had last year. My sense is that there's a lot of new material to play with and explore. So I'm excited for that too. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the energy immersion. Let me know how you go with it, and if it makes a difference to you or has made a difference to you already. And I wonder what's possible if you are willing to really just lower your barriers and allow yourself to begin receiving all the good stuff as a starting place. And then as you get really well practiced at this and you realize there's nothing going to show up that you can't handle, because, nothing ever shows up that we can't handle, even if some things aren't that much fun, then when you start being willing to receive everything, it means that you can receive everything. in good ways. And that's really fun too. All right. So if you want to check out Creative Futures, it is lisamurray.co/futures is the website. And yeah, I wonder what you could explore in terms of what receiving is for you. Thank you, Marina, for reminding me of that. And yeah, I feel like if you're willing to go on this adventure, you are going to create something totally different. And I have a big thank you to Fiona, who asked the question about receiving, because she was asking about all the scary, ugly stuff. And it's opened up a lot of different things for people. So thank you so much for that as well. All right. Thank you. Have a good day, weekend, whatever it is, night, adventure. I'm so grateful for you all. And I wonder what's possible now. Okay. See you later.